Welcome in, everybody. Little Thursday morning edition. Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope everybody's ready for what should be actually a pretty straightforward Thursday episode of the Torres Pod. So bottom line is, this week with the portal in Michigan and everything going on, crazy. But at the same time, today feels like a pretty straightforward show. We're going to preview the college football playoff. I'll give you picks on all four of the opening round games. And then from there, we will talk a little bit about what should be a fun week in the world of college basketball. Arkansas hosting or facing Houston down in Brooklyn, the CBS Sports Classic, Kentucky, St. John's, North Carolina, Ohio State, all of that good stuff. Before we get started, a couple quick things. One, first of all, give me a mic check. Does the mic sound good? Does the mic sound okay? I am, of course, recording here on a Thursday. No producer, Matt. So we're just trying to make sure that the mic sounds okay and everything sounds good. But no producer, Matt. But we are rocking and rolling. Appreciate everybody's support here on a Thursday. And I should mention, by the way, before we get started, a couple other announcements. One, as you can see pinned at the top of the YouTube chat, we have started a college sports specific email newsletter. Okay, now I know a lot of you don't get all your news via email, but I just thought, in my opinion, there isn't one place anywhere on the internet that you can get everything that is going on in the world of college sports. NIL, portal, coaching changes, coordinator changes, all that good stuff. And so we have started an AT Media Inside College Sports newsletter. It is free to sign up. I'm not going to charge you anything. I'm never going to charge anything for it. But basically, if you're somebody that maybe tunes into this show, whatever, but doesn't have time to stay on the internet all day and see what's going on in the world of college sports, I do think you should subscribe and check it out for yourself. All you got to do is click the link. It is that easy. That's really it with the newsletter. Also, by the way, for those of you listening on YouTube, also make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, before we get started, I do have a couple other things to chat about. Most importantly, we got to give a quick shout out to our friends and our hotel and casino partners. We got to give a shout out to Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so bottom line is, listen, it's that time of year. You're going to have some time off over the next couple weeks. You just want a place to just chill out and watch the games. Okay, so the bottom line is, the best place, first of all, the best place anywhere to watch games is, of course, in Vegas at the Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino, Fremont Street, just the best place anywhere in Vegas to watch games. But I also know a lot of you cannot make it to Vegas. And so because of it, I got to tell you about Circa's brand new sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so I was just at the Mint a few days ago. Awesome facility, awesome setup, all of the same hospitality and all the good things about the Mint, or about Circa Sportsbook, are at the Mint. Great customer service, beautiful place to watch games. And again, the best part about it is this is the time of year you want to chill. You want to watch some bowl games, college football, maybe some Saturday and Sunday NFL. Do it at the Mint, Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. We really do appreciate your support of the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, by the way, I'm seeing the mic does not work. Are we having mic issues? Mic issues. Check. We have mic issues before we get started. Todd Drake says mic issues. Do we still have mic issues? I got to get started. I need to know. With that said, I'll tell you what, until further notice, we're going to keep going. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, college football playoff is here. I don't think a lot of... Just trying to figure out, do we have mic issues or not? I'm just trying to figure this out. Sign up for the email. Oh, the sign up for the email newsletter does not work. Okay. All right. Well, that's really annoying. We will address that at a further time. All right. I'm glad the mic works. We'll get the email newsletter figured out. As a matter of fact, since it's a smaller crowd today, we'll just drop the new link in the chat. Give me 1/2 second here. Because you know what? It is a busy Thursday, but I'm never too busy for you guys, the incredible audience that you are. Give me 1/2 second, this and that, 1 second. All right. Let me do this. All right. Okay. I got the new link coming, people. All right. New link is in the chat. With that said, it is a busy Thursday in sports. There is no more time to waste. So people, let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. I'll say this. Do people realize there is a college football playoff coming this weekend? I'll tell you what, listen, I've been fortunate enough to go on radio in Tuscaloosa, Alabama over the last couple days, in College Station over the last couple hours, actually. And it feels like if your team is in the college football playoff, there's excitement, there's enthusiasm. It just doesn't feel like there's a lot of buzz about this college football playoff. And I don't know if it's because players are already entering the portal. It's obviously been a busy NFL news week with Patrick Mahomes and Micah Parsons, and Joe Burrow might be demanding a trade. We don't really know. Anyway, bring it up to very simply say the college football playoff starts on Friday night. Let's go ahead and preview all of the big games. I'll give you my picks, share some thoughts. Let's go ahead and dive in, and then, as I said, we'll get to college basketball, okay? So first things first, let's start with the first game in the world of college football and the college football playoff. I do, of course, want to go ahead and talk about the Friday night game, which should be, by the way, an awesome game. Like, I don't love how the TV schedule broke out, but I don't think that you can deny that Friday night in Norman, Oklahoma, Alabama versus Oklahoma in a rematch of a game that was played just a few weeks ago. It should be a fun one. It should be a good one, and I am excited about it. Alabama, by the way, the slight 1-point favorite in this game. Oklahoma and Alabama, the over-under set at 40. By the way, I'm all over the place today. Forgive me. Let's dive in. So Alabama, Oklahoma, these two teams, as I said, they just played a few weeks ago in Norman, Oklahoma, okay? And so in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I am all over the place today. The bottom line is that the way that I look at this game is pretty straightforward. How you probably feel about this game is basically how you view the first game, right? So Alabama, Oklahoma, 3 weeks ago in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Oklahoma, as I said, got a 23-21 win. And so to me, how you view this game is actually how you're going to view the previous game before. In the previous game, if you remember, Oklahoma wins, weird game. Oklahoma gets 2 defensive touchdowns. Okay. We're having some technical difficulties behind the scenes here. This is a total disaster. I'm just going to start this over again. I'm sorry. We're having some technical difficulties behind the scenes. Producer Matt is not here. Give me 1/2 second, people. Give me 1/2 second. All right. Okay. All right. I appreciate everybody's patience in the matter. Let's start over. We are having all sorts of technical difficulties. Pooh Bear the Plug says, "You're the man." Thank you, Pooh Bear. All right. Let's start over from the top, okay? So people that have been tuned in for the first 9 minutes of this show, I apologize. Let's do it. We'll count us down. We'll pretend like the first 9 minutes never happened, okay? 3, 2, 1. With that said, it is a busy Thursday in the world of college sports. There is no more time to waste. So, folks, let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, don't know how many people know this. College football playoff actually kicks off on Friday, okay? And so, first of all, in the chat, I would love for all of you to tell me just your thoughts on this. Like, I'm excited about the college football playoff. I think everybody's excited for the college football playoff. What I do not think it is not getting any mainstream coverage at all. Like, I turn on all the major networks, even ESPN, which is broadcasting this puppy, and it just feels like nobody's talking about it. And I don't know if it's because a couple of the matchups aren't great. I don't know if it's because, frankly, if I'm being totally transparent, I think a lot of college football fans, they just kind of, the default is to check out for a few weeks after the season and expect games on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But it just feels like there's no buzz, there's no whatever. But with that said, let's go ahead and preview these games, because I will say, once the games get started, it's going to be awesome. And the first game, everybody knows, it is Friday night, which should be awesome, by the way. Norman, Oklahoma, Alabama, the 9 seed, traveling to the 8 seed Oklahoma Sooners. And so when I look at this game, this is where I was starting a minute ago. When I look at this game, what I see is pretty straightforward. How you view this game, by the way, Alabama, a 1-point favorite in the Circa Sportsbook. The over-under set at a minuscule 40 points. So everybody expects close, low scoring, whatever. And I think how you view this game really just depends on how you view the previous game that was played. Okay, so Alabama and Oklahoma played about 3-4 weeks ago. It was the third to last game of the regular season, whatever. It was really the game that kind of unofficially clinched Oklahoma's spot in the college football playoff. They started to play Missouri and LSU. But when you win, when you win at Alabama and Tennessee in back-to-back weeks, it's going to be hard to keep you out of the college football playoff, okay? But in that game, how you view Friday's game really just depends on how you view the first game. In the first game, here are indisputable facts. If you like Oklahoma, it's because they went to Tuscaloosa and got a win over an Alabama team that is very clearly struggling, right? Oklahoma's defense is elite. They're incredible across the board. And I think even beyond that, and this is an important thing, it's not only an elite defense, but it is an elite defense, which, by the way, shut down an Alabama offense that has only gotten worse since the last time they played. And so if you view that game that way, then you're going to pick Oklahoma in this game. I'm actually going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to pick Alabama, and I'll tell you why. It is because, in my opinion, think about it from this perspective. Alabama, yes, they were at home. I get it. But Oklahoma had a defensive touchdown, a pick six, return 87 yards for a score. Alabama had the ball stripped on a kickoff, or a punt. I think it was a punt, which led to a very easy short field touchdown for Oklahoma. And oh, by the way, they still had the ball late with a chance to win, and were basically one first down away from a field goal attempt to win the game 23-21. And so when you factor in that Alabama, despite basically gifting Oklahoma 14 points, was still a first down away from being in field goal range, I actually like Alabama in this game. The other thing about that game is it really showed the two sides of Oklahoma. The defense is insane. The offense just is not very good, okay? And you go ahead and look at this Oklahoma offense. We don't need to get too much into it. But first of all, crazy stat from that game. Oklahoma, in the win in Tuscaloosa, had, how about this? They had a grand total of 212 yards of total offense. It was the lowest offensive output from a yardage perspective in an Oklahoma win since 2001. And so everybody's focused on this Oklahoma defense against the Alabama offense. But what about the Oklahoma offense against an Alabama defense in which they only put up 212 yards the last time these two teams played? So listen, the John Mateer story was cool in the offseason, comes from Washington State with the OC. But this is a team that has not been able to run the ball all year, like 105th nationally in total rushing yards. And I just look at this game and I just sit there and say, I kind of feel like I like Alabama. I kind of feel like they played something close to the worst version of football that they could play at home and still managed to be a play away from potentially winning it. The other thing, too, which is worth noting, I know what we saw from Alabama in the SEC championship game, -3 yards rushing. They had something crazy like 12, 13 guys out of that game, and about 9 to 10 of them are coming back. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, will not be back. LT Overton, the defensive tackle, might not be. But the best running back on that roster, Jam Miller, is back. A couple other skill guys are back. The O-line should be healthy. Go ahead and give me Alabama winning somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-17. You know, my first inclination was just take the under. I think I'm going to stay away from the under at 40, but I'll take Alabama to win outright, Alabama to cover the 1 point. Let's go ahead and get to the second game in the college football playoff. It's funny, I was just on Texags Radio just a few minutes ago talking to David Nuno about this game. It is Saturday, noon Eastern, 11 local time. And look, I get why they scheduled Miami against Texas A&M in that time slot. It is so they are not going head-to-head with the NFL. But it is such a bummer that we are not getting Kyle Field at night, opening round of the college football playoff. With that said, kind of an interesting point spread in this game. According to Circa Sportsbook, A&M is a 3-point favorite. The over-under is set at 51. And so when you look at this game, I think a couple things stand out. You know what actually stands out to me most about this game, Miami versus Texas A&M? It's the fact that these two teams are very much alike. Both of them are physical teams. Both of them want to run the ball. Both of them really kind of dominate the line of scrimmage and have dominated the line of scrimmage throughout their respective seasons. And so I think because they're so similar, I think it's going to make for an interesting game, because what the two teams want to do, they're not going to necessarily be able to do, right? So, you know, what is like the old saying when you date is that you don't want someone that's too similar to you, or you'll do nothing but butt heads, opposites attract, all that stuff. It's kind of like that in this game. You look at A&M and Miami. This was the stat that blew me away. Both of these teams love to get after the quarterback. Both are in the top 20 nationally in total sacks. That's really a big chunk of what has made each of them successful. Just great D-lines, get after the quarterback. You know, Miami is in the college football playoff because that D-line just dominated Notre Dame back in week 1. But the counter to that is this. Both of these teams, while they love to get after the quarterback, are two of the teams that protect their quarterbacks better than anybody in college football, both ranked in the top 15 nationally in fewest sacks allowed. So the two defenses want to get after the quarterback, want to disrupt things. And so you have to look at other places. And I think what stands out to me is the fact that, listen, when you start talking about the two quarterbacks, I know everybody wants to criticize Carson Beck. I know everybody wants to talk about how terrible he is and he was so bad at Georgia and this and that. You know, Carson Beck has actually been not only good, he's been good this season. He has been excellent over these last 4 games. Remember, Miami needed to win 4 straight games to even be in position to be in the conversation for the college football playoff. Well, guess what? Those last 4 games of the season, and I'm not saying they played the best teams in the world, but they played an 8-win Pitt team, a 7-win NC State team, and some pretty bad teams in Syracuse and Virginia Tech. But in those 4 games, Carson Beck, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 79% completion percentage. And you factor that in with Marcel Reed really struggling, 4 interceptions in the last 2 games against power conference teams, South Carolina and Texas. I'll be honest, I actually like Miami to win. Now, I think the best bet is probably the under. This is another one that feels like 24-20, 24-21, 21-17. But if you're asking me just for an outright pick, I actually do think I like Miami. For all of the criticism, Miami, to its credit, listen, one, they're a good football team. I know we talk about Mario Cristobal, clock management, big games, whatever. Mario Cristobal knows what he's doing, and he has built a phenomenal program, an excellent team, and a team that I think is kind of built to go on the road in this situation. The other thing that I keep going back to, A&M is beat up with obviously the running back situation and this and that. But at the same time, what also worries me a little bit is the fact that Marcel Reed has just been way too loose with the ball. Listen, you know we cover the portal as well and as much as anybody. But at the same time, what's kind of crazy is you're already hearing portal whispers that Marcel Reed might be entering the portal, which would indicate that means that A&M is forcing him out because he's not just going to leave as the starting quarterback at A&M. So I just bring it up because I worry about Marcel Reed turning over the ball. I don't think that A&M's defense is going to be quite as disruptive as it's been. And I will say my official best bet is under 51. I feel better about that than the actual game itself, but I will take Miami to win outright. 21-17, I will say, is the final score there. Really quickly, the other 2 games, I know people aren't as excited about them. Don't blame the G5s, blame the ACC. Miami should have been in that title game. If Miami wins, then Notre Dame gets into the playoff, whatever. Okay, but let's go ahead and talk about the 2 other games. The first one will be an early evening game in Oxford, Mississippi. It is a 3:30 Eastern start time. So we have Ole Miss hosting Tulane. Ole Miss a 17-point favorite, over under 57. Really quick, before we get to the particulars, one, I've seen some studies that say that this might economically be like worth 80, 90, $100 million to the city of Oxford and the surrounding communities. I hope as we get deeper into this playoff era, we can get more games in true home environments. So that's one. The other thing that's interesting about this game is that these two teams have played. Of course, Ole Miss beating Tulane, 45-10 back early in the season. But what's also interesting, by the way, is the fact that while these two teams have played, one of them has the head coach that they had throughout the season. One of them does not. Yeah, Lane Kiffin is currently the LSU head coach. John Summerall, who is the Florida head coach, is coaching in this game. Really quick side story, because I had somebody ask me, they said, Torres, why is one coach allowed to coach this game but not the other one? And I think they're two completely different situations. So very quickly, just to address that, with Tulane, I think they sort of understood like, hey, this is probably going to be the end of the run with John Summerall. All these SEC jobs are opening. He played at Kentucky. He coached at Ole Miss. He coached at Auburn. At some point, one of these jobs is going to scoop him up. And so I think from the beginning, it's kind of been, hey, if we win the American, if we get an at-large or an auto bid to the playoff, let's let him finish out what he started. And what's been interesting is not only has John Summerall continued to coach this team while also working on Florida, he's actually made it a very seamless transition. Will Hall, who was on his staff, is taking over for him. John Summerall donated to the collective, and John Summerall is basically actively recruiting for two teams. He's basically trying to convince all these Tulane players to stay together, and basically, essentially he's trying to hold that program together, leave it in good shape as he leaves. The issue with Lane Kiffin was pretty straightforward. One, it feels likely that Ole Miss will win at least one game, potentially more than one. Then all of a sudden, Ole Miss isn't making a hire or transitioning coaching staffs until we're now talking about what? The middle of potentially January, right? They win this game. Ole Miss does not play again until December 31st or January 1st. I haven't looked as far ahead on the schedule. They will play, I believe, Ohio State, I guess, would be the next game. But anyway, you're going to be playing January 1st. And so now all of a sudden, Lane Kiffin is still there. And beyond that, I think the other thing is Lane Kiffin is very clearly recruiting a lot of these players off this roster. Trinidad Chambliss, the starting quarterback, we don't know yet if he has another year of eligibility, but was basically open like, I don't know what my future is, was non-committal to Ole Miss after the season. There's already reports that Kawan Lacey, the star running back at Ole Miss, could follow Lane Kiffin to LSU. And so you can't have Lane Kiffin in that building wearing an Ole Miss visor while also recruiting for LSU. And I know what you'd say, it doesn't really matter, whatever. But the question becomes like, well, what happens after you lose? At some point, your season is going to end. Does Lane Kiffin just leave the jet on the tarmac and say, whoever wants to come with me? So it gets things really complicated. As far as the game is concerned, I do think Ole Miss is going to win, but I'll actually take Tulane to cover. I think you go back to that first game. If you go back, it was Trinidad Chambliss's second start, and it wasn't really Trinidad Chambliss's arm that beat them. It was his legs against Tulane. They just were not ready. He had like 112 yards rushing, a couple rushing touchdowns. This game, I think they'll be more focused. I do think there's the focus factor for Ole Miss. I mean, even Pete Golding, first game as a head coach, working on a staff, just brought in Frank Wilson, the former LSU interim head coach, to be part. There's just a lot of noise going on outside of this game. So I do think Ole Miss wins. I'll say somewhere in the neighborhood of 28-20. I think the other thing with Tulane, this is a team that has faced elite offenses all year, not just Ole Miss. They just faced the number one pass offense in college football in the American Conference Championship game and were able to beat them. So I've got Ole Miss winning. I think I said 31-20. That'll be my final score. I do think they win. I do think they advance, but I do like this game to at least be close. You know what I don't think is going to be close? Saturday night in Eugene, Oregon, Kentucky. Oregon hosting James Madison. Oregon, a 21.5-point favorite, over under set at 50. By the way, kind of an interesting side thing about this game. Apparently, there are still tickets available. I don't know if Oregon fans are just waiting for whatever would be their quarterfinal. I think it would be the Cotton Bowl, I want to say. I'm not totally sure. But I don't know if they're just saving up for their quarterfinal game against Texas Tech or what. But I'll tell you this, I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be ugly. Again, Oregon, a 21.5-point favorite. Thing about James Madison, listen, Bob Chesney's a rock star. I actually think he's going to be great at UCLA. But at the same time, here is what would concern me if I was an Oregon fan or if I was a James Madison fan. It is that James Madison is very one-dimensional offensively. Top 15 or so rush offense, about the 94th ranked pass offense. They don't pass the ball. You can't be one-dimensional against a team that is already significantly more talented than the team that you're facing. And then from Oregon's perspective, I know that James Madison has an elite run defense, but guess what? You know what Oregon has done all year? Faced elite run defenses. And you know what they've done all year? Stuff the ball down those teams' throats, okay? Go back. They faced Iowa, top 20 run defense, had like 7 yards per carry in that game. Ran the ball on Washington, ran the ball on Minnesota. I mean, these are good, solid run defenses, and Oregon has had no trouble moving the ball against pretty much anybody not named Indiana this year. So I'll say Oregon wins 42-20 or 42-10. I think Oregon wins. I think Oregon covers. And those are my official college football picks for the playoffs. So I have Alabama winning outright. Final score 20-17. I have Miami beating Texas A&M 21-17. I will say Ole Miss wins 31-10 or 31-20, but Tulane covers the 17. And I do think Oregon destroys James Madison. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. First of all, I appreciate everybody dealing with me through those technical difficulties early. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, a little bit of a shorter show today. We're going to go ahead and preview what should be a really fun weekend in college basketball. Arkansas against Houston in a top 15 matchup. Kentucky, St. John's, sort of a must-win game for both. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan, and one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So tell you what, want to go ahead and get to some college hoops looking ahead to the weekend. I know it's a little early to do weekend preview stuff for hoops, but darn it, it's our Thursday show. Why not? Before we get to it, though, let's quickly look through the chat. I have not seen any questions. Let's see. So Pooh Bear asks, since Kiffin is out, does he make it look better for Summerall and Florida? You know, I think that can actually work both ways. You know, the way that I look at the Summerall situation is, you know, Florida, listen, what's his face? DJ Lagway just entered the portal. I saw right before he went on air, their starting tight end hit the portal. And so I think it's a feel-good story. I will say, though, I think if Tulane were to somehow pull off the upset against Ole Miss, I do think if I was a Florida fan, I'd be kind of a little bit not very happy, right? I know there's still time until the portal opens on January 2nd. But at some point, like, you got to either be all in or you're not, right? Now, I think the opposite is true. Let me put it this way. I'd be curious as to how it would be perceived if Tulane pulled off the upset, right? Because one, John Summerall becomes this incredible sympathetic figure. He was able to balance both this and that. But I imagine Florida fans would get mad to be like, we got to wait another 10 days till you take over this job full time. Then I think the counter to that is everybody's like, they should have let Ole Miss coach, they should have let Lane Kiffin coach Ole Miss, or does it become Lane Kiffin was selfish and should have never left in the first place? I would just be interested. I do not know. But what I will say is one thing I do feel is that if Tulane pulls off the upset, I think it'll be a great story nationally. But I do think from the Florida perspective, they'll be like, okay, dude, it's great that you had that moment. Can you get to work? We got the portal opening in like 4 days. So I think it'll be interesting to see. All right, let's get to some of the other questions. By the way, Pooh Bear says you're the man. Todd says the link to the newsletter is working now. By the way, we had crazy technical difficulties off the top, so we appreciate your patience there. But I mentioned it off the top. We have started a daily college sports newsletter. I just don't think there's a great place for you or me or anyone to get all of your good information in the same place regarding the portal, regarding NIL, regarding whatever. It's completely free to sign up. We're not going to charge you anything, nothing like that. So go ahead and check it out. That is, the link is in the chat, and we appreciate your support. Speaking of support, before we get to college basketball, you know who else's support we appreciate? We appreciate our friends. We appreciate the ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod. We appreciate SeatGeek. Okay, so SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app, over 28 million downloads. What I love about SeatGeek, it's pretty straightforward, is two things. One, every ticket on the app is rated 1 through 10, either a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot probably means stay away, but they're honest with you. They're transparent. They tell you what seats are good, what seats aren't. But you know what I really love about SeatGeek and SeatGeek.com and the SeatGeek app? It's that they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. So if you go to SeatGeek.com, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, how about this? You get $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, if you use promo code Torres, gets you $20 off your first purchase. By the way, that applies to any concert, any show, anything with tickets on SeatGeek. It doesn't have to be college football or college basketball or the playoff or this or that. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres does get you, in fact, $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, we appreciate their support. With that said, let's go ahead and switch gears to college basketball. Okay, so college basketball, listen, it's going to be a little bit of a slower weekend. Tends to happen when there is a college football playoff going on. But there are still a couple very intriguing games. Now, I want to apologize again. No producer Matt today, so the graphics and the bells and the whistles, not quite what we're used to here on the Aaron Torres pod. But that said, I do want to talk about a couple big games, and I actually want to start with one of the later ones on Saturday afternoon. It is a 5:30 Eastern start time from Barclays Center, a top 15 matchup between the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Houston Cougars. I'll tell you what, circa, obviously it's a little early for a point spread on this one, but I think this is the game. I think this is the game. Is Arkansas for real? Are they legit? Are they a legit, maybe the favorite in the SEC, Final Four national title contender? I think we start to learn this weekend. Let's talk about these two teams. Again, no point spread yet via Circa Sportsbook. What stands out to me about this game is a couple things. One, what Darius Acuff is doing and has become is absolutely unbelievable. Okay, so I knew he'd be good. And, I had this little back and forth with Rashad Phillips. For people who do not know who Rashad Phillips is Darius Acuff's uncle, who also works as a sports agent. I've known Rashad forever. And I will say this, Rashad has been telling me since Darius was a sophomore in high school, this kid's the real deal. Torres, get on the bandwagon before it's too late. He is really, really, really good. With that said, as good as Darius Acuff, as good as I knew Darius Acuff was, I have to be real. I did not know he was this good, as through 10 games in a college career, something like that. Maybe it's 9, maybe it's 11, whatever. He is averaging, this is preposterous, 18 points per game, 6 assists per game, less than 2 turnovers, and he's shooting nearly 50% from the field and 44% from three. And oh, by the way, here's the crazy part. The last 2 games he's playing his best basketball. I know they just played Queens, and I know everyone's not going to freak out about Queens, but 23 points, 10 assists, 0 turnovers for a true freshman point guard. And oh, by the way, if you want to say it was only Queens, well, 20 points, 8 assists, 2 turnovers against Texas Tech last weekend. This kid is special. He is playing on a different level. He's already gotten the best of Mikal Brown Jr. He's going to try to do the same with Kingston Flemings this week, but the kid is absolutely unbelievable. Listen, it's early, but he's playing at an all-SEC level. He's playing at an all-American level. Is it too early to start talking about him as an SEC Player of the Year? I'll be honest, I don't think that it is. With that said, in addition to that, what also stands out, Trevin Brazile, man, unbelievable. Okay, and we talked about this, I think, for half a second on the show yesterday. But Trevin Brazile, I have said for a long time, I believe is the biggest mismatch in college basketball when he's locked in, okay? Because he is so big and so athletic and so skilled. You don't get that combination in one dude, right? You get a guy that's super big but not very skilled. You get a guy that's super big, but he's a little bit slow. You get a guy that's athletic, but he's only 6'8", he's not 6'11". You get a guy that's skilled, but he's not. You get the point. And so Trevin Brazile is all three. And Trevin Brazile, it has clicked for some reason this month, okay? Starting with the Louisville game a few weeks ago. Let's just look at what Trevin Brazile has done. I pulled up a tweet that I put out. Again, I apologize. The graphics aren't going to be great, but this was a tweet from me at Aaron_Torres. This month, 21 points, 5 boards, 3 of 4 against Louisville from the three-point line. 24 points, 10 boards, 4 of 5 from 3 versus Texas Tech. And then 26 points, 4 rebounds, 5 of 7 from 3 versus Queens. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that no big man anywhere in college basketball is playing better than him, and you combine it with Darius Acuff, who is scoring at an elite level, who's taking care of the basketball. As a matter of fact, we couldn't get the audio for some reason, but I want to read you a quote about Kelvin Sampson talking about Darius Acuff. He's an elite talent, an elite basketball IQ. This is Kelvin Sampson talking about Darius Acuff. Elite passer, he's tough. He's as good as any point guard I've seen. He just makes everything easier. He gets guys shots. He knows when to go. He knows when to change speeds. This I thought was interesting. He said the biggest separator for him is his ability to make threes. There's a lot of good point guards that can do everything but shoot. He does it all, and he's tough, competitive. I've just really been impressed by him. So those two are really leading the charge. I think what's crazy for Arkansas, you can argue that some of their other guys are still figuring it out, right? Carter Knox was great against Texas Tech. I would say not that he wasn't great, but wasn't the same level against Queens the other night. Billy Richmond, sometimes he gets you a lot of points, rebound, whatever. Sometimes he's just that defensive dog. DJ Wagner, on and on. Malik Thomas, by the way, has actually been pretty quiet the last few games. And so I just bring it up because it has been unbelievable to watch this team grow. What's also unbelievable is Houston. They are 10-1. And they just keep rolling, okay? And what's crazy is, I'll tell you, this is the crazy part about Houston. I was actually at their only loss this season. So they lost to Tennessee in Vegas at the Players era. And in that game, in my head, I started, all these things come to mind, right? Is that, they don't play defense quite as well as they used to. And, you're relying on freshman guards, and you're this and you're that. And then you look at them over the totality of the season. Statistically, they're just as good as they were last year, and in some ways better, okay? So first of all, the defense, it doesn't quite feel as just mean and aggressive as it was, but statistically, they're the same team. I went ahead and looked it up just to make sure, okay? So first of all, just in terms of Houston, they are currently number 2 in fewest points allowed, number 12 in field goal percentage defense. Their field goal percentage defense this year is actually better than it finished last year. Now, they finished last year, of course, 40 games played, Big 12 season, Final Four run, etc. But statistically, they're playing just as well on defense. And then I think what's equally as interesting and as important, they have been able to fill the scoring void left by LJ Cryer. This was the big question about Houston, right? Was that you lose LJ Cryer. He was really your best shooter, your best scorer. How are you going to respond? Well, Kingston Flemings, another freshman guard, was phenomenal early. He's averaging 14 points, almost 15 points and 5 assists per game to go along with 2 steals. And then Emmanuel Sharp, who's been around forever, 17 points and also shooting 42% from 3 on the season. So statistically, they are doing everything that they've always done. Defensively, they are just as good. The one place I will say about Houston that I worry a little bit, depth in the front court, and then specifically production in the front court. And what's interesting about Houston, right? So through the years, we know they have been a program that has largely been defined by basically the veterans in that program. They're relying a lot on freshmen this year. We mentioned Kingston Flemings. Their best big man is a kid named Chris Sinak Jr., okay? Ironically, I think Arkansas fans know that name because I'm pretty sure Arkansas was a finalist in his recruitment. The thing about Chris Sinak is there's pluses and minuses to his game. When Chris Sinak is on, go back and find highlights, Houston versus Auburn, like week 1 of the season. Chris Sinak had 29 points. I want to say 29 points in that game. He was everywhere. He was hitting mid-rangers. He was mid-range jump shots. He was hitting threes. Let's see. He finished, I was right, 18 points and 9 rebounds in that game. You would have thought he was the number 1 pick in the draft if you just watched that game. You're like, this guy does everything. And he's 6'10", and he's big, and he's athletic, and he's physical. But then you watch him against Tennessee. Up and down, this and that. And I think he's the X factor of the whole game. Because right now, I do think, to Arkansas's credit, their big guys are starting to figure things out. And this has been a Cal thing for a while, going back to last season, really going back to final season at Kentucky. He wants his big guys to be veterans. And he's like, he has the famous line of, you can't be a great, I'm paraphrasing, but you can't be a great team if you are not physical in the paint. And I don't know the exact way that he said it, but his insinuation was there's a lot of teams now that want to play 5 out and everybody shoots threes, and that's great. Sometimes you just need a bucket 2 feet from within the basket, and sometimes you just need a big rebound, and that is how he has built his team. And to his credit, the big guys are starting to figure things out. I think Malik Ewan over the last couple games has been playing well. 9-6 against Texas Tech, a big and one late in that game. And then I know Nick Pringle has been up and down, but 14-7 against Queens. And so to me, I'll just tell you this. I actually do like Arkansas to win the game. I like Arkansas to win outright. We don't have a point spread via Circa yet. But at the same time, I look at this Arkansas team and I say, I think they're figuring it out offensively. Or I think they're figuring it out down low. And I think they can handle Houston's physicality in the paint. I think you go back and look. That first Michigan State game, I think, was an eye-opener. They got beat up. They were not ready for the physicality of that game. And the guards kind of controlled that game early, and then the physicality of Michigan State wore them down late. Duke, Cam Boozer, we don't have to discuss. I know it's a sore spot with Arkansas fans. But you look at the Texas Tech game. You look at the Louisville game. They have been the more physical team, and this is why John Calipari scheduled the way that he did. So I do have Arkansas winning this game. I'll say 74-68, something like that. I think Acuff goes off because I think Acuff is that good. And I think Arkansas does enough in the paint to get the win. So 74-68, I believe is what I just said. I will take Arkansas to win the late game on Saturday at Barclays Center. Let's switch gears because I do want to get to the early game on CBS. CBS with the triple header. We have the Arkansas-Houston game late. We have the CBS Sports Classic. The second game at CBS Sports Classic is UNC-Ohio State. Probably won't be talking about that one very much. Not sure how many of you know. Not a huge Ohio State basketball audience on podcast and YouTube and all that. Do want to talk about the first game in that event, the CBS Sports Classic. Remember, CBS Sports Classic for years was Kentucky, Ohio State, UNC, and UCLA. UCLA's out. They replaced them with St. John's. And so this is the game we have been waiting for since essentially the day Mark Pope got the Kentucky job. It is Kentucky versus St. John's. Pitino versus his former team captain. Yes, in the 30th anniversary of their national title run together. This game will be in Atlanta. This game will be 12:30 Eastern on CBS. And again, we don't have a point spread. I believe KenPom has St. John's as like a 1-point favorite. So these two teams actually are pretty balanced as far as how they match up. What I think is interesting about this game, when it gets announced in the spring, There's so much excitement. There's so much fanfare. There's so much buzz. And I think we all thought these were going to be top 10 teams. They're not. St. John's is on the fringes of the top 25. Kentucky, we know, coming off that first big win against Indiana. And I think both teams kind of desperately need a win. So let's talk about this game. I've talked so much about Kentucky. Let's go ahead and focus on the St. John's aspect of this game. And let me say this about St. John's, is I know that Rick Pitino is not happy with his team because Rick Pitino is never happy ever, but they're 7-3 overall. I was at the game against Iowa State. They lost to Iowa State by 1 point in a game that they kind of, I don't want to say they controlled, but they were in position to win that game. They end up losing. Iowa State right now is sitting at 11-0 and number 4 in the country. Alabama, we know, is good. I think Auburn you can be frustrated with. Okay. But when I look at St. John's, I know every time you hear Pitino talk, it feels like the world is about to collapse. I actually think this team is kind of in pretty good shape. They have beat Baylor. They have taken care of Ole Miss. They have a couple nice out-of-conference wins, and I do think they want to take care of business and close this one out in style. Now, as far as this game is concerned, a couple things stand out. One, there are very clear strengths and very clear weaknesses with this St. John's team. I would say the strengths, very obviously, in my opinion, are that St. John's front court is really good. And that was the thing that stood out watching them in person in Vegas at the Players Era event, was that they have 3 different big guys who all do something a little bit different, but they all actually play well together. Those 3 players, Zuby Ejiofor, preseason Big East Player of the Year, Bryce Hopkins, and also Dylan Mitchell. So for people who have not watched St. John's or don't know much about the background, Bryce Hopkins, who's a former Kentucky Wildcat, which is crazy, is actually St. John's leading scorer. He's basically missed the last 2 years with injury, but he's averaging 14 points a game, about 33% from behind the three-point arc. And I think he has brought physicality to the 4 spot, something that was very much lacking last year for St. John's. They had Ejiofor down low. They didn't really have more physicality in the paint. It cost them against Arkansas. They go get Bryce Hopkins, etc. And I think he actually plays very well off of Zuby Ejiofor, Big East Player of the Year, the team's leading rebounder at over 7.5 a game. So those 2 are basically giving you about 30 and 12 a game. And then Dylan Mitchell's the total wild card. Okay, he's a former McDonald's All-American, began his career at Texas, ended up at Cincinnati, but he is like this crazy athletic 6'9", 6'10 dude, 6'8", 6'9", whatever. And he can literally defend like 1 through 5. I could be blanking on this, but if I remember correctly, some of the biggest possessions against Iowa State, they actually put him on Iowa State's point guard to try to get the stops late in that game. And so the front court is really good for St. John's. The issue a little bit is the backcourt, because the backcourt, maybe they have figured it out. I don't know. But every time Pitino gets asked about it, he gets mad. So Ian Jackson is averaging 11 points per game. This was, of course, the North Carolina transfer, former McDonald's All-American from the New York City area. And there was so much excitement about him. And yet it feels like every time Pitino's talking about him, he's mad because somebody's asking him a question he doesn't want to hear. But here's the bottom line. 3 of the last 4 games, Ian Jackson has scored in double figures. Now, I don't think he's a true point guard, and I think that's a little bit of what the issue becomes. But it doesn't mean that he hasn't become a very valuable player. It just hasn't been in the manner that people think. The most recent Pitino dust-up, and we weren't able to get audio of it, was after, I believe it was the DePaul game, because basically Pitino was asked about should he being Ian Jackson be playing more at the point guard spot. And basically, Pitino said, that's not his position. That's Dylan Darling's position. Dylan Darling is the transfer from Idaho State. So I just bring it up because that is your St. John's rundown. Love the backcourt. Love the front court. Backcourt's a little bit sketchy, and don't ask Pitino about it because he will not answer your question in the manner that you want. As far as Kentucky, listen, we've talked so much about Kentucky. You don't need me to tell you much about them. But what I will say, there are 2 very important things coming into this game. One, if you get the Jalen Lowe, Mo Diabate, and Brandon Garrison that you got last game, I think you're going to win this game. We talked about it on Sunday's show after the Indiana win. Everybody wants to say it's no big deal. It doesn't matter. Indiana stinks. I think it does matter because you got out of the guys that you expected to be starters exactly what you needed. Mo Diabate gave you 14 points and 10 rebounds and was the tough physical dude that he was at Alabama. Brandon Garrison only got about 6-7 points in that game, but played with the energy that you have needed from the beginning. And then Jalen Lowe made every big play down the stretch. He was either getting to the basket, he was dropping it off, he was giving it, whatever. He did what you needed from him in that game. And so that's the big question. Are you going to get some version of those guys in this game? And if you are, I think you can win. I think the other factor, let's call it what it is this the day we see Jaden Quaintance? So listen, I said about a week ago, we did a Jaden Quaintance update on one of our episodes last week. And what I said was, I believed this would be the game that he came back. The thought process was pretty simple. Mark Pope was saying weeks, not months, or days, not weeks, or whatever the quote was. But also beyond that, I just felt like, okay, you're going into SEC play in 2 weeks. If he's been cleared and he's been practicing, you don't want to throw him into the fire in SEC play. And so I said, do you get him a couple runs up and down the court just to get a sweat going against St. John's? And then you basically have like a week off. You play I guess you don't have a week off. You play Bellarmine right before Christmas. And is that the game where you get him 18 to 20 minutes? And then you really use the time between Christmas and the new year to really build up that stamina and get him going. So I think we see him. I saw Jeff Goodman say that he thinks that we see him. And I think, that could be a little bit of a factor as well. Now, the thing with Jaden Quaintance, you're not going to get the best version of him. You might not get the best version of him maybe until February, maybe until March, maybe not even at that point. But I don't think you're getting, 14 points, 10 rebounds Jaden Quaintance on Saturday. I think you're getting 2 points and 3 rebounds Jaden Quaintance on Saturday. And I think he plays 7-8 minutes if he plays at all. And so because of it, I'm going to be honest, I will take St. John's to win this game. I think Kentucky can win if they get the same Jalen Lowe and Mo Diabate as they got last week. I need to see it for more than one game, though, consistently. I know Jalen Lowe still has the brace on his right shoulder, so I need to see it more consistently. And I do think without Jaden Quaintance, this is a very, very, very tough spot for you to be in position to have to play this game without him against a physical front line. Like, again, I was sitting right under the basket for that Iowa State-St. John's game, and it was a freaking war. Every time the ball went up, Ejiofor is huge and physical. Bryce Hopkins is huge and physical. Dylan Mitchell is big and athletic. And if you don't get the best version of Brandon Garrison and Mo Diabate, I don't know that you can win that game, unless Jaden Quaintance comes off the bench with his Superman cape and gets you 20-10. Anyway, I will say St. John's wins this game 68-64. That is my prediction on that game. Those are really the only big games on the schedule this weekend. Texas Tech Duke has lost its luster. I think Texas Tech or Duke wins convincingly in that one. We have a couple other semi-intriguing games. San Diego State, Arizona late. I like Arizona because I think Arizona is a top 2, top 3 team in the country. Just trying to see what else is on the schedule, anything of note. Auburn and Purdue. I like Purdue. People make fun of me. Oh, you hate Purdue. No, I like Purdue. I think they're going to win that game. Let's see here. Let's get to a couple basketball comments. Basketball. Acuff protects the ball as well as Kyrie Irving, and he can shoot at all 3 levels like Trae Young. It's insane. Pooh Bear, I'll be real. I am blown away by Darius Acuff and everything that he has done. Pooh Bear says, Yaxel is that dude, though. Yaxel was my preseason National Player of the Year, so I knew how good he was going to be, all of that. And I do agree with Pooh Bear here that says, better hope we need Malik Thomas and Carter Knox to find some consistency. Then you become very dangerous. I agree. It is truly an above-the-rim Calipari squad. It's one of the more athletic teams I've seen in a long time. Chesney, let's get to Chesney really quick, who says Kentucky wins a much-needed game with the debut of Jaden Quaintance. Maybe so. But he also says definitely a must-win game. He says Rick Pitino looks like a dead man in that suit. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. First of all, for those of you who stuck with us through the difficulties at the beginning of the show, it was a train wreck, and I just appreciate your support and your patience in doing that. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. And as you can see pinned in the chat, we do have our daily college sports newsletter. I think you guys will enjoy it. That's completely free. You can sign up for that there. We're going to go. This is the final episode of the week. I will be back. When will I be back? Sunday morning. We'll be back to our Sunday morning show, recapping the college football playoff, anything that happens in the world of college basketball. Appreciate your support. We're out of here.